Welcome everyone to tonight's webinar. This is energy healing through the love of Mother Divine. Oh, it's a very nice subject. We've got love, we've got Mother Divine, lots of good concepts going on here, and healing, what I'm going to do is start out with a brief overview of what is energy healing, and then we'll follow that by a 3-minute period of silence, and then we'll follow that by a prayer of gratitude, and then we'll dive into tonight's session. And I welcome questions. Look, already another question came in. Thank you. Yeah, that's all. It's pretty simple. You can just sit back and relax and enjoy. And if you find yourself falling asleep, no worries, because that's pretty common that people go into. It's not at all uncommon for listeners to go into a very, very deep state of settled inner experience, inner wakefulness. It feels like, am I deeply asleep, or am I really getting this? But that's one of the ways that we integrate new information really quickly. And a lot of what's coming through is coming through partly on my words, but a lot of it is coming through like from a deeper level. So just letting you know, if you fall asleep, you haven't missed anything. Plus everybody gets the recordings after. All right. Energy healing is the process of focusing attention in an intelligent manner in order to produce a specific effect. And in energy healing, we need to a lot of what we're doing in this energy healing webinar is creating a context for the intelligent focus of awareness. Because we're always focusing our awareness somewhere all the time. But when there's a need in the body or in the life experience, then that's the time to focus the attention in a really specific way. So there's like a navigational map. We're focusing at the surface, but we're also going in and focusing at the subtle levels of consciousness. Awareness itself is an amazing thing. It is pure source material that we have the autonomy over to make it, to direct it here and there, which is like really incredible that as humans we can do that. Not only as humans we can do that, I mean, all living things can do that, right? Like animals do that and plants do that. Plants are super smart. I was reading about a lot of recent research on plants and how incredibly smart they are and how decisive they are, like that. So it's incredible that all living things can do that, but they can. All right, so that's our gift. That's our superpower, is being able to focus our attention. And as we do that, we bring the qualities of the source of creation to wherever we put our attention. So the body benefits from the infinite resource that comes from this value of being, pure perception, pure awareness, pure consciousness. It's very beautiful. It's very special. And that's why we feel pain. When something goes wrong in the body, we feel pain because the pain causes awareness, it brings the awareness into that spot. And once the awareness gets into that spot, the awareness goes to work to reduce the pain and bring everything back in balance. But pain will initially crop up for the purpose of bringing awareness into a particular area. And that includes emotional pain. You know, if the heart is hurting, that's because the awareness really needs to be in some level of the emotional scaffolding of the self. So this is what we're doing in energy healing. And it is completely my joy to be your guide and your support in this process. Ultimately, you are your best healer. I'm not going to go and heal you, but I certainly am here during our hour to help give a little signs of where to focus the attention so that you can engage with your own healing potential in the most efficient manner. You can ultimately through this process, this webinar process, we have the experience of the movement of it, how the attention goes in, and then the consciousness and the energy moves, and then we talk about what is happening when that happens. And so there's both the experience of, oh, that's what it feels like for the energy to move like that, and then, oh, that's what that means when the energy moves like that. So we start putting together the feeling with the understanding. And when we put those two together, this integrates the experience, and then you own it. And that's really why we're doing this. Oh, there's one more reason why we're doing this. And that is that, as I would say, oh yes, purifying. When they say, yes, it purifies. Yes, it purifies ignorance, because as knowledge comes, ignorance purifies. It's very powerful, right? The other reason we're doing this, which I find just thrilling and absolutely delightful, is that one of the, as you might recall, at the New Year, going into 2020, I did a little video, some of you might recall, I did a little video talking about how 2020 was going to be a year that humanity really established a new relationship, a more in-depth, like really powerful relationship with the microbial intelligence on Earth. And then, oh, COVID, oops, I can't say that word on YouTube. Anyway, something hit, whose name I will not mention, but you all know who I'm talking about. And, and that really created an effect, a worldwide effect of purifying our relationship with our microbial reality. And it really caused us all to look at that relationship and understand it in a way that we didn't understand it before. So it was really something. Well, this year, you guys, this year is the year that we're rising into a deeper understanding of our, of how we function as a collective. And I don't just, and I mean like really a large collectives. Like we're going to see as this year unfold, we're already seeing, it's very exciting, you know, history in the making and all that. We're already seeing how a large collective that moves together in a coherent manner can move natural law. And that's what we've been doing in these webinars, like ever since we started. Like that's what the webinars are about. We come together, we're like, okay, we can do this, right? Like as individuals, we can focus our attention, we get certain effects. Well, what happens if we do that as a group? So then we do the webinars and we do this as a group. And we've been watching over the years how this will affect, you know, particular, like different types of like weather events and other kind of collective events like that. So more of that today, no doubt, because we're really starting to get, yeah, organized and mobilized. Thank you. Comments coming in. Yeah, exactly. But we're doing it, the organization, the mobilization is like it's an inner action rather than being like out on the surface. It's like more inner. So it's not, if that makes sense. I could bring up examples, but I think let's just go ahead and dive into the next part of our session, and we'll look at examples as we go forward in tonight's webinar, if that's appropriate. So the next thing I want to do is have a few minutes of silence. Why silence? Because the source of creation is a field of absolute silence. It's infinite silence. It's infinitely silent. It's infinitely dynamic. It's infinitely blissful. It's infinitely life-supporting. It's infinite. It's an infinite resource of intelligence and creativity and energy, all the things that we need to uplift our world and to heal our bodies and to create, to like bring our deepest heartfelt desires to fruition. Yeah, so we're going to do that first. So I'll just ask everyone to close the eyes. We'll close the eyes for 3 minutes. After 3 minutes, I'll say, let's open the eyes, and then take a minute to come out gently and slowly, because the slower we come out, the more we integrate the experience of silence. And that's really important too. We want to like get to know our awareness, because the awareness is a big key to healing. All right, everybody, let's close our eyes. Let's slowly open the eyes. Such a deep dive. I lost track of time. As we're gently coming out, I'm gonna start the prayer of silence. Take your time though to open the eyes. Thank you to the source of creation. And thank you to the mother of the whole creation, Mother Divine, for being. Thank you to everyone in this webinar And through each of you, thank you to your entire ancestral lines. Thank you to all the mothers and fathers and grandparents and great-grandparents, etc., etc. Really feeling the ancestors coming online here. It's very beautiful. Thank you to the eternal tradition of wisdom, which creates a bridge of knowingness, knowledge, that connects the unmanifest to the manifest. It's the glue between what is not and what is. Or we could say, what is material and what is not material. Thank you for everyone, for our ability to work together as a collective, to function together collectively, to work efficiently and profoundly in everyone's highest and best interests. Yeah, I truly, truly hope that today's session will meet and exceed everyone's wishes and desires and expectations and hopes for what we can accomplish today. It is such a joy to be with all of you. Such an amazing experience, amazing magical experience for me every time. So thank you all so much. Thank you so much for being. Thank you for being. All right. I see the question answer box is already lively. So as promised, I will answer questions at the end, but I'm just, just kind of getting up there and getting ready. All right. Today's session is energy healing through the love of Mother Divine. And this topic came to me so, was suggested by one of the listeners here. Or maybe even two people suggested it. But it's a great suggestion. And I thought, oh, well, that should be easy, right? Because we're all in touch with Mother Divine. Is like to describe to you how I understand Mother Divine. So kind of create a little bit of context for today's session. But then when I went into it, I was like, oh, so big, so big. So we can think of, we've got our model that there's this unmanifest source of creation, and then there's this whole manifest field of creation. And in the manifest field, there's a spectrum, right? From less concrete to more concrete. So at the physical material level where we live in our human bodies and our world, it's made of stuff, it's made of clay and other things like that. This world is mostly earth material. It's mostly earth element, primarily. Our houses are constructed mostly earth element. Our bodies are constructed mostly earth element. So it's a very solid experience. It's very different from that quality-less, unbounded, absolute silence level of creation. But Mother Divine is all of this and all of that. Mother Divine is the whole ball of wax. So that's big. And of course, our consciousness is made of that source material. So it doesn't matter how big Mother Divine is, we can fathom Mother Divine. So I was on a course to fathom Mother Divine in preparation for this webinar. And I looked, and my awareness just kept going and going and going and going. And I realized this is a very big creation. The universe is very big. It's very big. It's very big. And as awareness starts to move out into the bigness of the creation, I'm taking you on the journey I went. As it starts to move out into the bigness of the creation, more and more what we know ourselves to be as an individual in proportion becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. At least what we know ourselves as a physical form, right? Our physical body becomes so small in relation to the bigness, the massiveness of the universe that is really mind-boggling. It's really mind-boggling. It's like it does something to one's awareness and consciousness to be able to exist within the context of a human form and at the same time fathom the actual size of the universe. It's very expanding. It's very expanding. Now, I was encouraged by those who love me dearly not to take this webinar too much in like a religious direction, even though we can think, well, if something is all that silent, infinite, eternal ocean of being, and is also all this material field of creation, indeed, this must be God. Like, what else could God be, right? So we could say that by using the term Mother Divine, what we're really talking about is God, for those who love religion and who love to think in those terms. And in some religions, God is perceived more as a masculine form and others more of a feminine form. I'm going with the feminine form here just because mothers create life. Just on that simple thing, mothers create life. Mothers create life. And you can say the feminine aspect of God is a little more oriented toward the dynamism of the creative process, and that the masculine aspect of God is more oriented toward the silent foundation behind the creative process. So there's the whole ball of wax, but there's a little bit like oriented toward the relative versus oriented toward the absolute. So we could look at the qualities of masculine and feminine like that. And why we decided to do tonight's healing using that feminine aspect and the love of that is because love is also a key player in the energy healing process. And it is, after all, February. And in most countries, we're celebrating Valentine's Day during February, so it seemed appropriate. But also because we've looked at a lot of the principal keys, or I would say like the main tools of energy healing that are employed in most cases, such as Dharma and connection with your pure potential. But we haven't really looked at love that much. And love, I see it as, just to put it in perspective or in context, is one of the aspects of Dharma, because Dharma is that which sustains the universe. Anybody who's not sure can go check out the word DHARMA on my knowledge base, and you can read a little bit more about Dharma there. But Dharma is a sustainer of the universe, and it brings together 4 qualities for it. So I put up my fingers, 4 qualities that, when working together, really provide a very strong sort of dynamic. They work together synergistically to create like a dynamic resource for energy healing and for healing the body. And in most cases, if there are troubles or challenges or issues that rise up, Dharma comes to the rescue, the 4 qualities. And just for those who are new, truth, compassion, which also is like love, right? Purity, orderliness, cleanliness. You have to understand these 4 values. They come from Vedic science, and in Vedic science, they don't exactly correlate with English words that we know, so we have to kind of work with it a little bit. But truth or knowledge, purity, love. Love is there as compassion, forgiveness, understanding, mercy, and then the third one is orderliness, as I mentioned before, purity, cleanliness. And then the fourth one is the hardest, I think, sometimes to interpret through English, but the word is tapas, and it means essentially the idea of being unattached or being able to let go. Something like that, being able to let go, being able to not lose the forest for the trees. And certainly it loops back around, that last one loops back around to truth, because that ability to not lose the forest for the trees comes back to truth, which is the establishment of the fundamentals of creation, which is that this silent source of creation is creating all the manifest fields. So when we're dealing with a problem, in most cases, the problem has arisen. I would say maybe all cases, the problem has arisen because at some point we've lost that intimate connection with, or we've lost touch with the presence of wholeness within our relative level of experience. Yeah, it's beautiful. So, all right. So there are these other tools, but within, the thing is we dive into truth all the time, and truth we can think of as a little bit more like that masculine aspect of God, which is that fundamental or foundation of order, of knowledge, of resource, of wisdom that underlies what we're doing. But then the love aspect is more like the feminine aspect, and it acts like a catalyst that awakens the healing process. And what love does is it creates a context under which one feels safe. This is the most important thing about the value of love. And of course, if we're talking about the love of the mother of creation, then this is huge. Basically, what we're doing is, in this energy webinar, and live webinar, we are elevating that quality or value of love all the way up to its like most complete, most powerful level, that the love coming through every point in creation, we could say every point, because there's no part of this amazing, immense, vast, huge universe that isn't infused with the life and the light of the mother of creation, of God, of the divine. Oh, I was going to say there's a kind of, yeah, different religions sort of look at that value in different ways. And I'm trying to be kind of neutral, religiously neutral or spiritually neutral, so as to accommodate everybody's beliefs and understandings. But we can say that if this one being, this one life force is within the entire spectrum of silence of being, and also the entire spectrum of the relative creation, then part of our means as humans for understanding Mother Divine, if we'll call Mother Divine now, is by subdividing. So we could say that it's logical to find subdivisions. And there are some traditions that have gone more deeply into the subdividing process than others. And some that have created very elaborate divisions and subdivisions. And the reason for doing that is so that as individuals, we can grasp the perspective of ourselves as individuals in the context of the immenseness of that source value of creation, that great, great Mother Divine, great Mother Divine. That's a download coming in for everybody. Feels like it's coming right in through the crown. It's coming in through the crown of the head, but it's absolutely settling right into the heart. Right into the heart. And it's interesting, as this download of this relationship that we have with this immense, immense form of self, Because what is outside of it? Nothing. Are you outside of Mother Divine? No. No, you're absolutely an integral part of Mother Divine. So as that's coming, as that's coming in, feels as if the download is affecting the nervous system directly. So some rewiring taking place in the nervous system in order to accommodate the condition of I'm going to say honoring, but what I really mean is recognizing that relationship all the time. And essentially, this is what we're doing in energy healing, is we are supporting the desires and goals of Mother Divine. Mother Divine has desires and goals too. You'd think, oh, well, Mother Divine is completely fullness of fullness. So what is there to desire, right? You're like totally everything. So what's to desire? But there is, because if the desire wasn't there, the creation wouldn't be there. So the very fact that the creation exists, the very fact that the material field of creation exists, means it means implicitly that there is desire. And what is that desire? That desire is for that silent aspect of the Creator to be ever more integrated, recognized, and established in its own creation, in the material aspect of the Creator. So this is what the Creator does. This is like the big story. The big story is the Creator is establishing itself in this big creation. It's kind of a beautiful story, and it's such an interesting fundamental story that it leaves plenty of room for all sorts of sub-stories, right? All sorts of finer, smaller events and happenings that all connect in. So you could say, well, yeah, but what about when things don't go nicely? Like, is that really the divine, like, establishing itself in the relative field of creation? And the answer is yes. It's kind of like a tangent story, you could say, because if you're right in the middle of this, if you're in the middle of the story, if you're like one of the main characters, of course, we're all the main character in our own story, but if the individuality, and that means all like the aspects of oneself, one's individual self, have lined up with that big story, then what happens is it's like being in the middle of the river, and the river just carries you along, and you get all the whole universe is behind going, go, you know, like that. It just pushes you along. And if one gets a little bit off on a side tangent and gets a little bit away from the main storyline, then what happens is there has to, at some point, inevitably, be the process of coming back into the storyline. And the coming back sometimes can be uncomfortable. And even sometimes going away from the storyline a little bit can be uncomfortable. So this is a motivator to do one thing, and that is to bring our individual desire, our fundamental, the main desire that sort of sits behind and is an organizing principle behind all the other smaller decisions that we make from day to day and moment to moment. But that underlying desire, to make it the same desire as the desire of Mother Divine, which is wanting to bring that silent source of one's own self, one's silent, pure, infinite potential, and for that infinite potential to express itself and find ways of inculcating itself in the whole material field of creation. I know there are lots of desires, and for some people, and particularly in the ancestral lines, there's like a little doubt or fear. Confusion and fear are clearing. They're clearing from the gut area. That's very interesting. They're also clearing through the 4 subtle levels of the the 4 dense levels of the physiology, but also some including the astral. So I'd say the 5 densest levels of the physiology, this confusion and fear. And the confusion and fear centers around the idea of, well, if my underlying desire, if my main desire, the main focus that sort of underlies all my other decisions and so forth is so abstract and it's so intangible, that somehow that's going to make me, it's either going to make me complacent, or it's going to organize things in such a way that I'm not as successful in the relative as I'd like to be. And I really feel that. I really feel that in ancestors who lived like back in the early 1800s, 1700s, 1800s, around in that time, even maybe early down to like maybe about 150-year period in there, from say around 1700 to about 1850 or 1830, something like that. So maybe, yeah, maybe 100, 130, 140 years, something like that. It's like there's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of uncertainty about anything that's rather abstract. That's okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to help our ancestors for a minute. And this is part of the experience part, the experience level of our energy healing webinar. And it's beautiful because for all of us, if we go back that far, there's, you know, it divides up. You have 2 parents and then 4 grandparents and so on and so on. So we end up with a fairly nice number of ancestors that each of us are working with. But I'm just feeling a kind of a turning energy happening inside our webinar collective. So bringing us together as a sort of coherent wholeness. And of course, not just us, but also those who will listen to this webinar later, because later it goes up on YouTube and eventually, you all get it immediately, but it could take months or a year before it goes up on YouTube. But anyway, coming right into that center. There's a center. We're organizing ourselves. As one of our participants said, organize and mobilize. So we're organizing ourselves into this coherent structure, which we've done many times before in these webinars. So we're getting quite good at it, especially those of you who've been with me a bunch. It's like, you got this, you can help all the new people. And we're just organizing ourselves so that we're like the eye of a fly. Each one of us is looking at the same picture, but from our slightly different perspective. And what that does is it provides this beautiful, like multifaceted understanding. It allows more information to come through all of us so that each one of our ancestral lines receives the benefit of our entire collective, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Okay. And what the ancestors are receiving is the same download that we just received. So what's happening is the big self of you, that larger self, it's more integrated with the whole cosmic body, is able to move through the heart center. It's like, it feels like the heart field is moving. The heart field is moving. Oh, yes, I'm seeing some things I want to share with you, but it's moving into the ancestral field. We could, sometimes I use the word ancestral archive. That also can be explored further on the web knowledge base, into the ancestral archive. And basically what's happening here is essentially is putting into perspective the fundamental benefit of aligning one's individual desires at like the deepest level of the heart, individual desires with the desire of the divine. It's not that hard to understand, right? There's silence, there's dynamism, and they're like talking to each other. It's like a massage, sort of. The silence fuels the manifest field. The manifest field reflects back to the silence, and the silence knows itself better than it did before because it has that reflection like a mirror. It's really pretty simple, really. Even though we're so small, in perspective with the rest of the universe, we're just so small, and yet we can get this. And I know all you guys you're getting it easily. So congratulations. For the ancestors, there is, as I'm looking now into the ancestral field, one of the problems that a lot of the ancestors are dealing with is that they feel that there's a great mystery, particularly in the process of procreation. There's a great mystery in how we create ourselves and our families and our life and how we create offspring. It's like this, when the creation of offspring, and like the moments of birth and death, okay? At the moments of birth and death, there's this interface between this material world and the less material layers of creation, and there's a kind of a gut reaction to feel some fear around that which is unknown, or that which has been defined as unknown, fear of the unknown, fear of making mistakes. And with that, now we get to enjoy the actual fundamental of tonight's webinar, which is energy healing through the love of Mother Divine. I was wondering when it was going to come forward. So here it is that through our energy healing circle, we're like a big circle, right? Each one of us on our computers. We're able to be, with our consciousness, we're able to be a kind of a instrument, a collective instrument for a flow of love, which is big. Anyway, the knowledge was coming through the heart. The download for the ancestors is coming from the heart. The flow of love comes through now. It comes through, and it really touches like every cell in the body. It really speaks. And the love is also, it's so intense. There's kind of a bit of a purifying element to it, which I wasn't expecting, but that's okay. That's okay. It not only purifies out doubt and uncertainty and fear from the heart center, but it also purifies out I see a lot of movement of energy through the ancestral archives, of a lot of movement for sense of self, and a lot of movement of beliefs from the past, beliefs and understandings and impressions and pain bodies and attachments to this, judgments, expectations, all connected to feeling separate from the source of creation, all connected to that, I'm just little, and I'm just little and disposable or something like that. It's not the case. And we go, how it is in the energy healing sessions, both these webinars and also the daily remote healings for those of you who are following those as well. We circle back to these patterns again and again, but one of the reasons we circle back to these patterns, when we're circling back, we're not just circling back endlessly on the same pattern. It's more like a spiral, right? Each time we circle back to a larger, deeper, more profound form of that pattern. That's one thing. Or we come at it from different angles. There's a light. Excuse me, I have to stop and tell you something. There's a light that's radiating. It's established within the center of our healing circle, and it is the light of being, of pure being, and then it structures as that pure potential value of self, and my pure potential, your pure potential, the pure potential of the trees and the picture behind me, and the grasses and the flowers, everything, the fog, the pure potential of fog, the pure potential of you and everything. It is very much a collective form. The pure potential is a collective form. And it is the potential for anything that has been manifested in this creation. We're still with the ancestors. This I'm speaking to through us to the ancestors. Anything that has been manifest in this creation is by its very nature that which is meant to be. That which is meant to be. That which is the most perfect expression of divinity that can exist at that moment. You are the most perfect expression of divinity that can exist at this moment. Because if the Almighty Mother Divine or God could have created something else, it would have. And it created this. So it means you are everything that was intended. And there's another value here. And it's like it's taking a little time to come together because it's so important. And the integration, it comes together a little bit slowly so that it integrates better, right? Just like coming out of the silence, we come out a little slowly so that the silence can integrate as we come out. This is another download that's coming in through our healing collective into all of us, and then through us immediately it passes off to the ancestors as well. And then from the ancestors it loops back to wholeness. But this is the understanding, is the direct experience of being, I'm going to use the word precious, but I don't think that's really the best word. You know, again, sometimes I feel failed. I feel as if English is failing me, because we need a word here. We need a word that means so valuable to the creation, so valuable to the source of the creation, that there is nothing more valuable. It's the opposite of feeling disposable. It's the opposite of feeling like we don't like ourselves, or annoyed or frustrated, or deploring oneself. It's the opposite of that. It's that feeling, it's that knowing, And this is how the divine looks at us. And this experience is activated, and it comes through the creation when our personal intention or that fundamental desire is perfectly aligned with the desire of the divine. We have access to the resources of Mother Divine. I'm just feeling it. We're looking at it in our collective with our eye of the fly thing, with our multifaceted diamond. Like somebody who looks through a crystal ball, only the crystal ball has all these facets, so each facet shows a different angle on the thing. It's a tool. It's not just a tool, it's a resource. It's a resource. That this value that we gain through our relationship with the Mother of Creation it takes on a form at the causal level of the physiology. For those of you who are new, you can look up causal on the knowledge base. But this causal level of the physiology is very ocean-like. It's manifest, but it's so big. It's big, like the universe is big. It's an infinite form of our physiologies. And in that area of the causal body, there is a space that accommodates this love, this level of being valued, infinitely valuable, cannot put a price on it. Valuable beyond measure. Ooh, that one works for me. Being valuable beyond measure. There's a space in your being that is where all the laws of nature, that support and uphold the knowledge of yourself as valuable beyond measure reside. And it's a resource. And I'm asking, we just offer the knowledge of it. We see it. Of course, as we see it, as we focus on it as our collective, it also passes to the ancestors. But it also returns to the source of creation. Oh, so the source of creation experiences through us being valuable beyond measure. And it is indeed valuable beyond, Mother Divine is indeed valuable beyond measure, precious beyond measure, adored beyond measure. So it's like a loop. And of course, Mother Divine loves love, loves our love, loves us, loves, God loves God's children, God loves. And so this is a valuable commodity. It's a valuable commodity to the mother of creation, to the source of creation, and to the mother of the universe. Our love is valuable, is precious. Now we're going into a little more silence as a collective, and we're allowing that love to multiply to infinity. In waves. It's like a wave of the infinite, another wave of the infinite, and another wave of the infinite, like that. One after, rolling waves, rolling waves. I'm noticing it, activating a very subtle energy in the mitochondria and the physiology, in the muscles. You'll probably feel it in your muscles. And the heart's a big muscle. Just letting the body enjoy the bliss in the muscles, in the mitochondria, which are in those muscle tissues, also the liver, bringing peace. It brings peace, it brings trust, it brings understanding, it washes away those feelings that are opposite. It balances those feelings of being frustrated with oneself, or not happy with oneself, or feeling not good enough, and all that. And when I say washes, I'm really seeing something that is like a kind of a evening out of the field of life. There's some aspect of evenness that's coming into the entire ancestral field with us. It's evening. And of course, when we're helping our ancestors, we're helping lots of other people too, because we all have, first cousins and second cousins and third cousins. And there are a lot of people who benefit by the transformation and upliftment of the DNA, which is exactly what happens when we're working in the ancestral archive. We're working with the DNA specifically, directly. It's not just about purifying off morpho groups, which I've talked about fairly extensively in the past. It's about bringing a kind of light to the DNA. I learned the most amazing thing. Thank you to my dear husband. I feel reverence for my husband. He's an amazing man. Thank you. Because he brought to my attention this week through an article from National Geographic, was it? Yeah. That, is it 10% or is it 20%?
8%.
8% of our DNA comes from viruses. And what's really amazing is that this viral information in the body, and you might have to help me out here, is responsible. One of the things that viral information in the DNA is responsible for is memory. Yeah, our ability, like the way our memory works, is structured into our DNA from viruses. Amazing. What was the other thing that it was besides?
Placenta.
Placenta. Oh, that's right. That the way the placenta forms in the uterus is primarily structured from DNA information from viruses. Amazing, amazing. Because when you think about it, it's the role of the placenta is to ensure that the human physiology evolves during its earliest moments in this world in the healthiest possible way. It's astounding, isn't it? Astounding, astounding, astounding. And also viruses are considered quite ancient forms. But I'm digressing a little bit, but the reason I bring this up is that by the time we're occupying these physiologies, the information from our ancestors is residing in the body at the same level of power and influence as the information from viruses. There's a lot in that. Maybe we'll have to do a webinar on it at some point, or maybe I'll have to be careful. Can I say the word virus? I probably can't.
Yeah.
Oh, I can. I can say virus and I won't get like kicked off of YouTube or something. Okay, good. Yeah, virus. No, anyway, sorry. Yeah, so our memory is engaged when we put our attention on Mother Divine. Because what we're doing when we put our attention on the whole ball of wax, that immense, eternal, I mean, just so big, right? Just so big you can't, it's almost a stretch to put the attention, is we're putting our attention into the entire field of creation. And there, the entire story of everything that ever existed is part of that form. It's a kind of honoring of a particular type of intelligence in our DNA. It's not the ancestral intelligence so much, although, you know, if the ancestors' DNA was changed by a virus, sure as heck, we would inherit that. So part of it is our own exposure to viruses in our lifetime, but it's also the exposure to the viruses that our ancestors experienced in their lifetimes. But the viruses bring in a kind of freshness in a way. They bring into the DNA a value of all possibilities, a value of being able to step outside everything that we expected, to have experiences of surprise and amazement and learning new things and expansion of consciousness. And it's not a coincidence that after that virus, whose name shall not be mentioned, has come and gone all around our whole earth, that we suddenly are starting to move as a collective in ways we never did before. Oh, examples before our very eyes. And I should maybe be a little careful, but there was a federal court hearing yesterday in the United States, and it was really an empowering example of how the collective consciousness influences the federal lawmakers. How those who stand in political positions, and we're going to do a whole webinar on aspects of our culture like media and politics and all that. So I won't go too much into it now, but it was a fabulous, but I must say, it was so empowering to watch. It was a 5-hour event, marathon event, but the outcome was not what was expected. But the outcome was a reflection of the masses. It was a reflection of the desire of the masses. And that was the manifestation of an experience. Like, there were about 80,000 people watching that when we were watching it too, because it's definitely, history was in the making right there. 80,000 people were watching, live streaming on YouTube for 5 hours. No, I didn't watch for the whole 5 hours, but that was this example. It's an example. And this is, now, I don't know, except for inside our webinar, like, we're like in a special spot where we are seeing, our minds are making the connections, the mental connections between the virus and the event that occurred yesterday, that was an exempling for the masses of how we function together with common intent. Our minds functioning together, our hearts feeling together. It wasn't just the minds functioning, it was the hearts. It was a very heartfelt issue that was up, actually. And how that was a fundamental influence over how, as a collective, we made a difference. We made a difference. We made a difference. All right. Well, we'll just see what kind of laws the lawmakers come up with. We must go to questions now, because many questions are coming in, and we are only 15 minutes out from the end of this event. And last time I just lost track of time and kept you for 1 hour and 45 minutes. Please forgive me. No, anyway, I begged forgiveness last time. It's fine. I don't feel that guilty because it was really fun, but I'm being careful this time not to go too much over. So here's a question. I would like to know about touch in self-healing. Oh, this is so good. You've talked about focusing awareness and running our hands above the body, but not about actually touching the area where we put the attention. Okay. When I feel the Divine Mother, I feel held by her and touched by her. Yeah, I do too. Good, beautiful point. The feminine brings up touch in me, and I'm very in love with the feminine face of God. Thank you. So thank you for this beautiful question. First of all, so if we're talking about any of the senses, we're talking about the reality of that sense of perception across the entire spectrum, from the dense material level all the way to the finest level. So the question here, as I understand it, is about the densest level of touch. Like, and of course we do that. Like, if you hurt something, oh, that hurt, or you put your hand in. And also, I can say that even when I'm doing hand chakra work, sometimes I put my hand directly on the body, like direct connection. And of course, there's massage and all different types of energy healing techniques out on the market, right, that involve more direct contact. The action on the surface is present in order to awaken the touch that occurs across the entire spectrum. And ultimately, in its optimal condition, it goes all the way back to the source of creation. So that if you've got a wound or a hurt part somewhere, or you're going into doing some heart work, like your heart energy center, and you touch, that what happens is we do the action here on the surface, but what that does is it activates the field of consciousness itself, and it activates the streams of awareness, and that touch becomes a touch that's not just on the surface, but it's deep. It's like you can put your hands here and you can feel your emotions, right? And emotions aren't physical, emotions are emotional. So the actual physical touch is like it's like it catalyzes the turn of the flow of awareness from out to the surface back in again. It brings it all back in again. And of course, that what that does is it causes an integration between the outward and the inward flow of awareness, which supports integration of the silence of being with the more material level of being. And it's that process which actually heals. The reason things fall down or feel bad or don't go the way you want them to go is because in some area, there needs to be more integration of that source of creation with this expressed level of creation. And energy healing is basically integrative. That's all it does, is it just reestablishes that connection. And when the connection reestablishes, then all of a sudden the entire resource of the source of the universe is there to back up the healing process. And the healing process tends to be, I would say, that integration that's occurring at the deeper level, at the inner, wherever the seed of the imbalance is, right? The karma or the discordant feelings or whatever, it's in the causal body or astral body or emotional body or mental body or whatever, wherever that seed is, when that turn occurs and that integration occurs at that spot where the seed is. In today's healing, we did a lot of work for our ancestors, right? So some integration there for the ancestors as well as ourselves. Then the physical form at the surface, which is the reflection of what's going on inside, it spontaneously, naturally, and in energy healing, when I say naturally, sometimes that means it might take a little while because it's not invasive. Like for the physiology moves, like lots of, like actually physically moves. So for instance, in tonight's session, part of tonight's healing involved healing for the nervous system and a kind of rewiring for the nervous system to accommodate a new level of human evolution, collective evolution, like to support all of us so that our nervous systems are wired in such a way that we can work together as a collective, organize and mobilize in ways that are even more sophisticated, life-supporting, environmentally friendly, in ways that will speak to Mother Divine, that will speak to wholeness, that will reflect back to wholeness. We, as a wholeness, are speaking to wholeness. And wholeness sees itself as wholeness. And then that's a good experience. And Mother Divine's like, oh yeah, look what's going on Earth. There's good stuff right there, man, I'm there. So, yeah, so that's what we're doing. Thank you, great question. Okay, here's another question. Paramahansa Yogananda said, the mother is much closer than the father. Oh, that's very sweet. Yes, I would agree in that. The mother energy is more inculcated with the material level of creation. So as long as Paramahansa Yogananda is speaking to his disciples, right? So he's speaking from a perspective that makes sense to people, to Westerners who have been not so much who've been bred and raised in the West. We have certain types of viruses over here in the West, different from they have from what are had in India or in the Asia or other places. Well, not anymore, I guess. Now, I guess if there's a virus, it just goes everywhere. But anyway, in the meantime, the point being that, you know, he's speaking to people who, some of the followers who he made that point to, they hadn't stabilized that experience of totality or wholeness. They hadn't experienced it to stabilize it yet. So from that level of consciousness and that level of evolutionary development, then absolutely mother is closer, because mother is the embrace of all this relative, is literally all this relative field is also the expression of the body of mother. It's a beautiful point though, I love it. Divine, essential, adoration, adored. Oh, yes. People coming up with words. Beloved could be a word. Yes. Beloved could be a word. Adored and adoration could be a word. Yes. 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 That value. And but it's, beloved. I love beloved because it's like, my beloved. Um, I adore and love, beloved, all these words. But I feel that the direct experience of it is like, it's something that I feel that each one of us has to understand from our own sort of very intimate level of experience. And the value of taking this step as a group is we can all, as individuals, benefit from each person's perspective, right? Because if I see it from my individual perspective, but then again, there's that aspect of can't see the forest from the trees, right? Like you experience it, but like, am I really understanding it fully? But then if each other member of our healing collective is experiencing that value of exquisite appreciation, deepest reverence for the very existence of your being, such a powerful sense of belonging and well-being and necessary and it's amazing when you see it in the perspective of how very small our physiologies are in the light of in proportion to the rest of the universe. And then on top of it, realize how very, very beloved, how very essential we are. It's really, it brings together all these opposite values, which cause this incredible expansion of awareness. And that expansion of awareness is one of the fundamental processes, we could say, are one of the three big fundamentals of the energy healing process: purification, integration, and growth. And so the expansion of awareness is part of that. And these three, they kind of, they keep cycling around: purification, integration, and growth, and they cycle in a pattern. And so there'll be that expansion value, and then the expansion, like knowledge purifies ignorance, right, will cause some releasing of something that's not useful for your evolution, some letting go, and in this case, letting go of feelings of being not good enough or disposable or lacking or unworthy, or all those feelings of the opposite of being the most essential, most important aspect of creation. And anyway, we don't need that. We don't need that, because Mother Divine is all there is. We are Mother Divine. As I mentioned earlier, if there was something better that the Creator could have created in our place, it would have. Because you exist, because you live, it means you are meant to be. All right, let's look at another. First time, feeling the energies as a heavy blanket in the gathering, almost disassociated, and then started with entities like protector animals arising. Oh yeah, it's like seeing, especially if you're accustomed to leaning on certain healing expressions of your own causal body, all these angels and guides and ascended masters and saints and all that, those are all they're all causal forms, and they're all actually part of you, but we're all, as individuals, used to sort of leaning on different ones that are kind of our favorites, our go-to support system, subtle support system. And so it's not uncommon in the healing webinar to have as a first reaction, oh yeah, of course, well, here's this activation, this big energy activation for all my support system. But really, it's your support, it's you, the support system. And then Kundalini Shakti is in process in the body, and wondering if it's too much activation. You choose how much activation. Your awareness and your consciousness decides how much. So if it's too much, you say, no, I step back. That's all. You just step back. You choose to step back, and because it's you. We're not dealing with something outside ourselves, right? We're not dealing with something that's actually bigger than us. Even Mother Divine is, even that, we are all that. So Nothing is bigger. There's only one thing. Grounding sheet. She put a grounding sheet overhead, and that's helping. And she's grateful, and she's hanging in. Oh, bless your heart. Bless your heart. So yeah, it would be good maybe to go to think about ways to this. It's the integration. It's the integration is required. More integration. So we have three phases, right? There's the expansion, the growth, the purification, and the integration. And as the integration, so what we do is we just bring the attention to the integrative aspect of energy healing. Because when the integrative aspect is there, then it's connecting. All that seems like outside is connecting to the inside, and the inside is connecting to the outside, and it starts to be felt. And that was that evenness, that blanket of evenness that we were experiencing before with the ancestors, remember? To kind of levels the playing field and brings everything into a kind of state of simplicity and ownership of one's own personal power and autonomy over creating the experience internally and externally exactly as you need at any given moment. So all the things that are happening are being created by one's own self, basically. Would you give us a link to the 5-hour collective? Oh, sure. But you have to understand there's a backstory to that thing. I mean, this started about a month ago. Tom, maybe you can help me, because the thing is, it's a little delicate. It was extremely, extremely controversial. This extremely controversial thing happened. It was very, because I have adult children, my adult children don't get their news from like the nightly news. They don't get their news from the mainstream media. They get their news from like actual events, like they're online, and there's like, oh, something's happening. Oh, look, there, and so we were watching this whole thing unfold, and it's been unfolding for about a month. So if my hints, and I have to be a little careful of what I say because of it being like public, things go public on YouTube, right? I have to be a little bit careful, but if you're not aware of it, you probably get your news from mainstream media, which means you miss this, like probably one of the biggest historical events, like there's a movie being made about it. It started a month ago. There's already a movie being made about it. Yeah. Anyway, I shouldn't say too much here. But for those who are curious, we'll have to figure out a way, Tom. We'll have to figure out a way, because some of you might not be curious. Some of you may not give a darn. But, oh, thank you. Yes. Okay. We need to send, oh, people are raising their hands. Okay, we need to send some links to everybody to find out what happens. Anyway, the story is still unfolding. We are in the middle of a major historical event right now, which is so controversial. I'm being careful in what I say on this live stream, but I'll send links to everybody, and you can check it out for yourself. It's absolutely fascinating. Okay. I'd love to know if Mother Divine can help with clearing of anger, especially in the heart area. Thank you. Oh, you betcha. So anger. Now the thing about anger is, how are we doing for time? Oh my gosh, we're already over. And there's so many questions coming in. Okay, look, I have a blog post on anger because anger is a magnificent thing. Anger is one of those things that, again, maybe because we just weren't exposed to enough viruses, our ancestors just weren't exposed to enough viruses in the past. But the way our ancestors have handled anger in the past just hasn't been super effective. And we learned from our ancestors how to handle certain challenging situations. The truth is that anger has a great energy within it and behind it. And when it surfaces with discrimination and measured regularity, it becomes an instrument for evolutionary change. And sometimes the evolutionary change that we need is big enough that it needs that. It needs like an extra boost. It needs an extra body of power, fire behind it. To make it, to move a mountain, you need some fire. Like a volcano. Volcanoes move mountains easy peasy, right? And is that Mother Earth like having a little anger, little meltdown, literally? So anger comes forward for that reason, to create like a significant change, an important change. It comes forward, but I would like to add one thing to that. Could you make another note? I should add the following to the blog post on anger. Okay, just all you have to do is add the following and I'll remember what it is. And that is that when we are okay, so we've got this spectrum. This will be the last question for now, and then I will answer more questions tomorrow. And I've got whole pages of questions over here too, so I promise everybody will not forget you. But okay, when our awareness is experiencing this field of ourselves, which is a material field of ourselves, and sometimes the awareness is more at the surface, and sometimes it's more abstract, right? And sometimes it's just in the silence of being, and then sometimes the silence permeates the awareness. And so even if we're up here, we still know the silence is there. Even if we're up here, we still know the silence is there. And so this is like more of a it becomes a little more refined experience that way. And then there are other more elaborated ways in which the silence integrates into the material level of self, which is what we're doing in energy healing and why we're all here together. Okay, so if the awareness is more up at the surface, and when anger is present, it has a tendency to sort of push the awareness up to the surface. It's harder to feel like, oh yes, I'm experiencing the source of creation, I feel so enlightened, when you're like really upset about something, right? It's almost like anger pulls the IQ down a few points or something. So at that moment, this is for everybody, and we've done this healing before, but you know how we do the loop, we do it next time, we do it at a bigger level, right? And that is to flag those moments, to flag all those moments when life is a little overwhelming or uncomfortable, or in such a way that it camouflages the connection to source or the presence of source within the field of the manifest. So we have to flag those moments. So everyone, it's just a little tweak. It happens more at the mental level of the body, maybe from the astral through the mental level of the body, this little tweak, so that when you start to feel the anger, or you start to feel frustrated, or you start to feel anxious or upset, you recognize, oh, this feeling is surfacing because it's going away. It represents a stress that's leaving me. It represents a stress. And that's why anger rises, because something has to change, right? Some imbalance needs to move. It's time for an imbalance to move. So the anger is part of that process of letting go of what you don't need and establishing what you do need. And when it rises, in order for you to position yourself so that you have access to all the resources you need to move that mountain, what we do is we feel the emotion or the feeling rising to the surface, and we go, oh, that's something that's purifying. That's something that's leaving my system. And as soon as you do that, what happens is you become ungripped from it. It's like a little sort of witnessing or kind of disassociation from the feeling. It allows you to step back. And of course, you can't measure your anger out to the surface of reality in a discriminating manner if you are gripped by it, right? You literally have to step back at least a little bit in order to make that happen. So the flag, which is it's just an agreement with yourself. Oh yes, I'll just flag those to let myself recognize, oh, this is something that's on its way out. Then what that does is it allows the awareness to step back inward like that. And as you step in, that feeling that you don't like, it bubbles out. It bubbles off. It bubbles off. When you step back. you can then follow the trace or the trail of that discordant feeling down to its source. And at the deepest level, this was, I think, 2 webinars ago, we did a lovely webinar on fulfillment. And what happens is when you go down to the source, what you find is whatever that thing is that was making you feel rather annoyed or uncomfortable or frustrated, where it emerges from the source of creation, it's really an expression of fullness or wholeness that wants to express itself. It's some value of fulfillment coming from the source of creation that wants to be, it wants to live on the surface of this world. And as it rises up through the subtler levels of awareness, it rises up as mounting waves of desire. So if you catch it like very close to the surface, it feels like a very intense desire. Oh, I so want this to happen and it's not happening, something like that. And so if you catch it up here, it can feel like frustration, but if you allow that feeling to be released, you allow it to flow off by recognizing, oh, the frustrated aspect is on its way out, then the awareness takes a dive in, and we go back and we look at the original seed of that, the fundamental of that desire. And that clarifies, what was the divine really trying to do in this situation? What was the ultimate intention of the creator for making this happen? And when you know that, as that knowledge rises to the surface, you're just gathering all the resources to actually make it, to actually bring it to fruition. By the time it comes up to the surface, you've already structured the whole thing. You can do that. You can go back behind the experience. And in energy healing, as we dive awareness down to the subtle levels of creation, we move outside the constraints of space and time. So you can really, deconstruct the experience and get back to its original and re-establish a better path forward for that particular impulse of fulfillment. Okay, that was an awesome question about anger. I see many awesome questions have come in, and I've got some down here too. So I love you guys, and I've kept you way past your bedtime. Please forgive. Tomorrow, we will do this again. Everybody who is here tonight will get both recordings, tonight's recording and tomorrow's recording. And tomorrow will be on the same topic, but we will be addressing the topic from, I'll probably start in with questions as I usually do. And we'll probably address it from the angle of your questions and concerns. So everyone, please feel free to email in some more questions or leave the questions down here in the question and answer box, and we will extract them from the computer and I'll have them in front of me tomorrow. And I'm really looking forward to being with all of you tomorrow. It's been such a lovely time. I know. I know, it's amazing. It's amazing what we're doing, you guys. It really is mind-boggling. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Thank you all for being with me tonight. Bye. See you soon.